Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into what I like to call the ultimate statistical mystery. We're going to map out exactly how to report complex variable relationships. You know, if you've ever stared at a massive output file from SPSS and thought, how on earth do I translate all these numbers into a clean, compelling narrative for publication? Well, you're absolutely in the right place. We're focusing on one of the most powerful analytical tools in a researcher's toolkit, moderated mediation. And crucially, we're looking at exactly how to format those results perfectly for APA 7.
Here's our roadmap for the explainer. First up, the variable mystery. Then mediation, the middleman effect. After that, moderation, the volume dial, and moderated mediation, combining forces. Then we'll look at a real-world application involving Rome before wrapping up with writing and reporting results.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the variable mystery.
We start our whole investigation with a basic assumption, right? In classic, straightforward research, an independent variable directly impacts a dependent variable. It's that simple, linear cause and effect storyline we all learn on day one. But let's be real, data is rarely ever that simple. We really have to look for those underlying variables that complicate the story behind the scenes. When we're looking at advanced human behavior or complex systems, there are literally always hidden forces influencing the outcomes. Finding and, more importantly, reporting these hidden truths, that's exactly what separates good research from truly great research.
That brings us to Section 2, mediation, the middleman effect. Our first hidden force is the mediator. Think of this as the crucial middleman in our investigation. Mediation is all about the pathway. It essentially answers the how or the why one variable affects another. It gives us the actual mechanism. So if A causes C, the mediator B is that step right in between. Now, when you're writing this up in APA 7, you don't just state that a mediator exists. You have to actually report the specific indirect effect. This is often referred to as the A-B pathway, and you absolutely need to include its bootstrapped confidence intervals to actually prove that the mechanism is statistically significant. You can see exactly how this mechanism maps out visually right here. If you trace the dashed arrows, we see that the independent variable, x, doesn't just shoot straight over to y. Instead, it works through the mediator, m, to ultimately reach that dependent variable, y. This indirect path is the literal heart of the mediation effect.
Moving right along to Section 3, moderation, the volume dial.
Here we meet our second hidden force, the moderator. I like to think of this one as a volume dial on a relationship. So instead of explaining the why, a moderator explains under what specific conditions a relationship is strong, weak, or if it even exists at all. Think about individual difference variables like someone's age or specific experimental conditions. The moderator doesn't explain the sequence of events, it dictates the intensity of the effect. When you go to write this up in APA 7, your readers are going to be looking for a few specific things. They want the interaction term significance, the R-squared change, which shows how much variance the moderator actually explains, and a simple slopes analysis so they can really visualize that volume dial in action.
To see this volume dial in action, take a look at the moderation model we're showing here. Notice how the moderator W doesn't point to X or Y directly. Instead, it points directly at the relationship line that connects X and Y. It is literally turning the strength of that connection up or down depending on its value.
It is absolutely crucial to know how to distinguish these two. A great little mental shortcut to keep them straight in your own research is this. Mediation is the middleman explaining why, while moderation is the volume dial explaining when or for whom. Once you have that fundamental difference locked in your brain, you're completely ready to combine them.
Which brings us to Section 4, moderated mediation, combining forces.
Okay, let's really dive into this. The absolute climax of our statistical analysis is when these two forces combine to form moderated mediation. Synthesizing these models together, we now have a mediator M explaining the core relationship pathway from X to Y. But look at the moderator W. It is simultaneously pointing right at that A path. This means a moderator is actively turning the dial on that mediating path. The how or why of the relationship is actually changing depending on the level of the moderator. It's like a giant puzzle coming together.
Now, this complex web is typically tested using the widely adopted Hayes process macro in SPSS. Specifically, Model 7 is built to test this exact architecture by computing what's called the conditional indirect effect. And what's truly powerful here is that this model allows for up to 10 mediators operating in parallel, all while calculating exactly how your moderator interacts with the independent variable to drive those mediators. It's a real game changer.
Let's see what this looks like in practice with Section 5, Real-World Application, Rome. Let's ground all this textbook theory in a really fascinating real-world example about Roman heritage tourism. Researchers publishing in the journal Tourism Management wanted to know what actually drives a tourist's intention to revisit Rome. To figure it out, they used a moderated mediation model to test their specific behavioral drivers.
Here's exactly how they mapped out their variables. Event involvement was their independent variable, and revisit intention was the dependent variable. They hypothesized and actually proved that place attachment acts as a middleman, mediating the desire to revisit. But here is the brilliant part. That mediating effect is moderated by how authentic the experience feels. So the more authentic the experience, the stronger the place attachment derived from the event involvement, which in turn strongly drives the intention to revisit. Keep this specific authentic experience moderator in the back of your mind because we're going to use it to build our perfect APA 7 results section right now.
Let's bring it all home in Section 6, Writing and Reporting Results.
All right, let's bring you back to reality. You've run your SPSS process model, your output files are practically overflowing with numbers, and now you actually have to write the thing. How do you properly write up this complex web of relationships in strict APA 7 format? Well, as our source material points out, identifying these effects is crucial, but reporting them accurately is what gives your data its ultimate storytelling power. If you don't report it cleanly, the reader completely loses the narrative of how the strength or direction of the association is changing.
When you're synthesizing your process output for an APA 7 manuscript, you absolutely must hit a few critical checkpoints. First off, it's considered best practice and just a really great detail to include in your methods or results intro to note that your variables were mean-centered prior to analysis to handle multicollinearity. From there, you have to explicitly detail the significant moderation effect, break down both the direct and indirect effects, and critically, you've got to report those bootstrapped confidence intervals. Finally, the true star of the entire show is the index of moderated mediation.
Let's apply this step-by-step to our Rome tourism data. Pulling directly from the process output matrix, you'll first state the index of moderated mediation for APA 7. For example, you'd reveal that experience authenticity yielded an index of negative 0.6355. Then you report the bootstrapped confidence intervals exactly as they appear. That's the boot LLCI and boot ULCI. In our example, the CI is negative 0.6643 to negative 0.6154. To prove significance to your readers, you explicitly state that because 0 does not fall between the upper and lower limits of this confidence interval, the moderated mediation effect is indeed significant. Honestly, this is your exact blueprint for getting your sophisticated statistical findings right past reviewer 2.
So, now that you have the complete blueprint to solve and report this statistical mystery, what deeper truths will you uncover in your own data? The next time you're drafting a paper, remember to look past simple cause and effect. Use this guide to accurately write up your findings in APA format and let your data tell its full, complex story. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer and happy researching.